Ancient structures were not just built but programmed with a forgotten code. This is the core mystery of the lost manual of the builders, a hidden operating system for antiquity's greatest monuments. By the end of this, you will understand how cracking this ancient code could revolutionize our own sustainable technology. We will explore how temples aligned with stars and pyramids harnessed natural forces, revealing a global network of knowledge. Why does our modern world feel so disconnected from the seamless harmony these ancient engineers achieved? Their blueprint was not a rolled parchment, but a living code. It was a language spoken through the angles of the sun and the proportions of stone, a system of knowledge so deeply embedded in their world that they did not need to write it down. This was the builder's true operating system, a sophisticated set of rules passed from master to apprentice over countless generations. At its heart were universal mathematical constants, the same numbers that govern the spiral of a seashell and the orbit of a planet. The ratio known as pi, for instance, is subtly encoded into the very dimensions of the Great Pyramid of Giza, its perimeter corresponding to the circumference of a circle with a radius equal to its height. Across the sea, the Parthenon in Athens was meticulously designed around the golden ratio, a proportion believed to represent perfect beauty. This was no coincidence. As archaeologists like Dr. John Romer have argued, these were deliberate applications of a precise sacred geometry. This shared language reveals itself in the impossible stonework of Machu Picchu, where blocks were cut with such geometric precision that not a razor blade can fit between them. We see it in the grand Egyptian temples, their doorways and corridors perfectly aligned with the rising of a specific star or the solstice sun. How could cultures separated by vast oceans and thousands of years develop such a strikingly similar architectural vocabulary? The evidence points not to isolated genius, but to a shared foundational intelligence, a single source code for building in harmony with the universe. This unified knowledge system forces us to wonder about the tools they used to execute such perfect designs. This knowledge was not stored on clay tablets, but in the minds of masters. A young apprentice in ancient Mesopotamia would learn the sacred ratios and star alignments not from a written text, but through the rhythmic cadence of a chant, the guiding hand of a teacher, and the stories told around a fire. This was the first and most vital tool of the ancient operating system, a living network of oral tradition and rigorous apprenticeship. The master builder was a walking library, a repository of generations of architectural wisdom. He taught by showing, not just telling, embedding complex engineering principles into songs, rituals, and hands-on practice. This method of knowledge transfer was not unique to one place. In Celtic Europe, the Druids maintained their sacred knowledge through memory alone. In ancient India, the Asthapati architects passed down the precise rules of temple construction from father to son, a lineage unbroken for centuries. As cultural anthropologists like Dr. Lynn Kelly have shown, these cultures used sophisticated memory techniques, mentally mapping vast amounts of data onto imagined landscapes called memory palaces. Rhythmic chants and poetic verses encoded everything from the correct angles for stone cutting to the specific days for laying a foundation. This system was incredibly effective, allowing for the transmission of complex data across generations without a single written manual. But this strength was also its greatest vulnerability. The entire library existed only as long as the masters lived. When a society faced collapse or a master died before passing on his secrets, that entire branch of knowledge could vanish in an instant. The silence that followed the fall of such guilds is deafening. It makes our own digital age, with its relentless data storage, seem both fragile in its own way and desperate to preserve what the ancients held so securely in their minds. This reliance on human memory forces a haunting question. How many secrets of the builders were lost forever when the last master of a particular craft took his final breath? To find those answers, we must move from the intangible world of memory to the physical marks left behind, to the stone itself. The stone itself bears silent witness to their celestial calculations. If the first tool was the human mind, then the second was the sky above it. Ancient builders looked to the stars not for myth, but for measurement, using the heavens as a vast, unerring compass and clock. Stand at the center of Stonehenge at dawn on the summer solstice and watch the sun rise perfectly over the heel stone. This was not a hopeful guess. It was a moment of breathtaking precision engineered millennia ago, a feat repeated in stone across the globe. The Great Pyramid of Giza, for instance, is aligned to true north with an accuracy that rivals modern instruments. Its 4 sides face the cardinal directions with a margin of error of just a fraction of a single degree. How did they achieve such perfection without satellites or laser theodolites? They used the stars. They likely tracked the circumpolar stars, those that never set, mapping their slow circles around the celestial pole to find a fixed, unwavering point in the night sky. This was celestial programming at its most fundamental. In Egypt, the Temple of Karnak is a sprawling stone calendar. Its axis is oriented so that during the winter solstice, the setting sun illuminates the entire length of the sanctuary, a beam of light traveling deep into the heart of the god's dwelling. This alignment marked the turning of the year, a signal for planting and harvest that was literally built into the landscape. According to experts in archaeoastronomy like Dr. Giulio Magli, these alignments served multiple, intertwined purposes. They created an accurate calendar for agriculture. They cemented the power of the priesthood who could predict these cosmic events, and they may have even been intended to channel or mirror celestial energies in ways our modern science is only beginning to ponder. This was an advanced understanding of cyclical time, a recognition that the universe runs in great, repeating loops. It challenges our linear view of historical progress, suggesting that these ancient scientists saw a harmony between earth and sky that we have largely forgotten. The heavens were their ultimate reference point, a constant they could build their world upon. But to anchor these celestial designs to the earth, they needed to command the very substance of the planet itself. The stone itself could be made to sing. Deep beneath the island of Malta, within the hypogeum of Hal-Saflieni, lies a chamber carved from the living rock. When spoken into, this room does not merely echo, it resonates, amplifying the human voice into a deep, pervasive hum that vibrates through your very bones. This is no accident of architecture. It is the result of the third and perhaps most profound tool in the ancient builder's arsenal, a masterful command over material science and acoustic engineering. These builders did not just shape stone, they understood its hidden voice. They selected specific types of rock not only for their strength, but for their resonant qualities, their ability to store heat, and even their strange capacity to generate small electrical charges under pressure, a property we call piezoelectricity. This was an alchemical knowledge of matter itself. Consider the colossal walls of Sacsayhuaman in Peru. These zigzagging ramparts are built from enormous blocks of granite, some weighing over 100 tons, fitted together with a precision that defies logic. More astonishing than their fit is their performance. Peru is a land of violent earthquakes, yet these walls have stood for centuries. Their complex, interlocking design and the inherent energy-dampening properties of the stone itself allow the entire structure to shift and settle during a tremor rather than shatter. It is an architecture that dances with the earth. Elsewhere, we find fields of ringing rocks, stones that produce a clear, bell-like tone when struck. Ancient cultures often transported these special stones to their sacred sites, incorporating them into monuments that were not just seen, but heard. Materials scientist Dr. Joseph Davidovits has proposed a revolutionary theory about the Great Pyramid stones. He suggests that many were not quarried in the traditional sense, but were a form of ancient concrete, a geopolymer slurry poured into molds. This would explain the impossible precision and the lack of tool marks, pointing to a chemical sophistication we are only now beginning to appreciate. This mastery reveals a worldview where physics and spirituality were one. A temple was not just a building, it was a tuned instrument. The correct frequency of sound, channeled through a specifically chosen stone, could alter human consciousness, induce states of meditation, or create a palpable sense of the sacred. The builders were not merely constructing shelters. They were engineering experiences, manipulating both matter and energy to create environments that resonated with the human spirit and the frequencies of the planet. This holistic command of nature's forces a startling question. If they could tune stone and harness earth energies with such finesse, what other power sources did they discover that our modern science has yet to find? The Great Pyramid of Giza may have been the heart of a forgotten power grid. This is not a metaphor. Imagine the entire structure not as a silent tomb, but as a humming generator designed to harness the planet's own subtle energies. While a controversial idea, it forces a fundamental question about the ancient operating system. Did it include methods for harvesting and using ambient energy? Look at the internal architecture with an engineer's eye. Researchers like Christopher Dunn point to the complex arrangement of granite and limestone, materials with distinct electrical properties. Granite, rich in quartz, is piezoelectric. It generates a small electrical charge when under mechanical stress, such as the constant, immense pressure from the pyramid's own weight. The so-called King's Chamber, with its massive granite beams, could have acted as a resonant cavity, amplifying these subtle vibrations from the earth itself into a usable energy field. This was not magic, but a sophisticated application of material science. The evidence extends beyond Giza. In certain temples, intricate water channels are found running beneath stone floors. Flowing water creates vibration and pressure, a constant source of mechanical stress that could stimulate piezoelectric effects in the foundation stones, potentially generating a low-level electrical current. Likewise, the towering obelisks, often capped with electrum, a natural gold and silver alloy, may have functioned as giant conductors. Placed at key points, they could have acted like lightning rods, channeling atmospheric electricity or even the Earth's telluric currents. Perhaps the most tangible clue is the curious absence of soot in some deep subterranean chambers, like the Dendera complex in Egypt. If torches or oil lamps were used for light, their carbon residue would be unmistakable. Its absence suggests they might have used another form of illumination, something clean, like electric arc lighting or a technology that harnessed ambient electromagnetic forces. This exploration is not about proving fringe theories, but about confronting a pattern. Why did cultures across the globe invest centuries of labor and unimaginable resources into structures that seem to have energetic, rather than purely practical or symbolic, functions? The pursuit of their lost power sources forces us to look down at the very ground they built upon and wonder what flows beneath our feet that they learned to tap into. These sprawling earthworks form a planetary interface etched into the very skin of the Earth. Far above the Peruvian desert, the Nazca lines stretch for miles, depicting a hummingbird, a spider, a monkey, figures so vast their form is invisible from the ground. They were not built to be seen by human eyes at street level. This forces a radical idea. What if these geoglyphs were not simple art, but a form of large-scale terrestrial data storage? Imagine the entire landscape as a colossal hard drive, with these shapes acting as files in the ancient operating system. The precision required is staggering. The straight lines run for miles without deviating. The curves of the animal glyphs are perfectly symmetrical. Creating this from ground level without the ability to check their work from above would have demanded an advanced understanding of geometry and surveying. It points to a centralized command, a master planner who directed teams of workers to execute a grand design. This phenomenon is not isolated to Peru. In England, the Uffington White Horse, a stylized equine figure carved into a chalk hill, has been maintained by local communities for over 3,000 years. In Ohio, the Great Serpent Mound winds its way for a quarter of a mile along a ridge, its coils aligned with the solstice sunsets. According to researchers like Dr. Anthony Aveney, these sites often function as complex calendars. The serpent's head, for instance, aligns with the summer solstice sunset, while its coils may point to other solar and lunar events. They are not just pictures. They are timekeepers, massive stone clocks tracking the slow dance of the heavens. This represents a fundamentally different relationship with information. For us, data is transient, stored on servers that can fail in an instant. For them, knowledge was communal, enduring, and physically integrated with the environment. The message was not stored on a device, it was the land itself. It was a system meant to last for millennia, a permanent record for the community and for the future. So if the Earth was their screen, who was the intended user? Was it the gods looking down from above? Was it a message to their own descendants, a warning or a record encoded in a way we can no longer read? Or perhaps these sites were not meant for a user at all, but were part of a larger function, like nodes in a global network we are only beginning to perceive. Two pyramids, one on the banks of the Nile and the other on a high Mexican plateau, speak the same silent language. The base perimeter of the Great Pyramid of Giza and the Pyramid of the Sun at Teotihuacan are nearly identical, a mathematical echo across an ocean. How could two cultures, supposedly never in contact, arrive at the same complex dimensions? This is the central puzzle of the global network hypothesis, a radical idea that suggests the world's most famous ancient sites were not isolated wonders, but interconnected nodes in a single planet-spanning system. The evidence is written in the geometry of the Earth itself. If you take a globe and plot the locations of Giza, Machu Picchu, the ancient Cambodian temple of Angkor Wat, and the mysterious Moai statues of Easter Island, a pattern begins to emerge. These sites appear to be strategically placed along significant lines of latitude, often separated by exact fractions of the planet's circumference. The Great Pyramid, for instance, sits at the intersection of the longest land meridian and the longest land parallel, a location so statistically improbable it feels intentional. Early researchers like Professor Charles H. Hapgood argued that this precision required a knowledge of the Earth's true size and shape that, according to conventional history, should not have existed. He proposed that a prehistoric, advanced civilization possessed accurate world maps, which were later passed down as fragments to various emerging cultures. This idea is expanded by authors like Graham Hancock, who suggests a lost mother culture, a sophisticated seafaring people wiped out by a cataclysm like a comet impact, left behind a legacy of knowledge that the survivors rebuilt upon. The architectural similarities are not just in size but in principle. The use of sacred geometry, the alignments to solstices and specific stars, and the recurring focus on certain mathematical constants like pi and the golden ratio create a shared architectural fingerprint. Mainstream archaeology often attributes these parallels to independent development or a universal human intuition for harmony and proportion. Yet the sheer specificity and global scale of the correlations challenge a simple explanation. Could it be that ancient master builders were part of a global guild, traveling the world and seeding this knowledge? The network theory implies a shared purpose so grand it rewrites our entire understanding of history. Were these sites waypoints for ancient explorers, celestial markers on a global map, or were they something more profound, like acupuncture points on the body of the Earth, designed to tap into and stabilize planetary energies? To move from the map to the meaning, we must listen to the numbers themselves, to the universal constants that these builders wove into the very fabric of their creations. The numbers pi and the golden ratio are not modern inventions. They are universal truths waiting in the very fabric of space. Open any engineering textbook today, and you will find these constants, the same ones that silently govern the dimensions of a sunflower's seeds and the spiral of a galaxy. Yet, thousands of years ago, the builders of the Great Pyramid of Giza encoded pi into its very bones. The ratio of its perimeter to its height is precisely 2 pi, meaning its base mirrors the circumference of a circle with a radius equal to its height. This is not a vague approximation. It is a deliberate, sophisticated mathematical statement carved in millions of tons of stone. Across the Mediterranean, the Parthenon in Athens is a monument to the golden ratio, a proportion often denoted by the Greek letter phi. Its entire facade fits perfectly within a golden rectangle, a shape that can be subdivided infinitely into smaller copies of itself. Step inside, and you find this same divine proportion repeated in the spacing of its columns and the dimensions of its inner chambers. How did they achieve this without our symbolic algebra or digital calculators? They understood geometry not as an abstract concept, but as a living language, the native tongue of nature itself. They saw phi in the curve of a ram's horn and the proportions of the human body, and they simply replicated this cosmic blueprint in their own creations. This goes beyond aesthetics. Structures built with these ratios possess a unique structural integrity, a natural resistance to stress and strain that has allowed them to stand for millennia. Mathematicians like Dr. Mario Livio have spent their careers exploring why the human brain finds these proportions so inherently beautiful and harmonious. The answer seems to lie in our own biology, in the way our eyes scan a scene and our minds perceive order. The ancient builders did not need a textbook to tell them this. They observed it in the world around them and understood it as a fundamental principle of creation. This mathematical consciousness permeated their entire culture. We see Fibonacci sequences, the number series that generates the golden ratio, encoded in the art of ancient Egypt and Mesopotamia, in the precise petal counts of sacred lotuses and the branching patterns of trees depicted on temple walls. This was not mere decoration. It was a declaration that their temples and pyramids were not separate from nature, but an extension of it, built according to the same operating system that governs a forest or a solar system. Their use of irrational numbers, values that can never be fully written out, hints at a breathtaking idea. They were not just building structures, they were attempting to manifest infinity itself, to anchor an eternal, unchanging mathematical truth into the physical world. If their buildings were the hardware, then these constants were the most vital lines of code in their universal operating system. Every column in an Egyptian temple is a sentence written in stone. The spiral of a column capital mimics the budding papyrus, a symbol of life emerging from the primordial waters. The precise number of columns in a hall reflects a sacred number, a harmonic key. This is the symbolic syntax of the ancient operating system, a visual language where every shape and motif conveyed a profound technical or philosophical truth. These symbols were not mere decoration. They were functional diagrams, schematics for cosmic principles that the builders sought to harness. Take the Ouroboros, the serpent devouring its own tail. This ancient symbol, found across cultures from Egypt to Mesoamerica, is a perfect illustration of cyclical time and eternal return. It is a graphic representation of a closed energy system, a self-sustaining loop with no beginning and no end. It speaks of the great year, the slow, 26,000-year wobble of the Earth's axis known as precession, a cycle the ancients appear to have tracked with astonishing accuracy. Then there is the flower of life, a pattern of overlapping circles found etched into temple walls from Abydos in Egypt to the Forbidden City in China. To the untrained eye, it is a beautiful geometric mosaic, but to a master builder, it was a seed of creation. From this one pattern, you can derive every one of Plato's perfect solids, the fundamental building blocks of reality according to ancient philosophy. It is a two-dimensional map of three-dimensional space, a blueprint for the very fabric of the universe. Symbologists like Dr. John Anthony West argued that this symbol was a kind of conceptual toolkit, encoding the geometric relationships that underpin everything from crystal structures to planetary orbits. Another key symbol is the vesica piscis, the almond shape created by the intersection of two circles of the same size. This was not just a sacred shape for early Christians. It is the geometric moment of creation, the womb of form. It is the first step from the unity of one circle into the duality of two, generating every other proportional relationship, including the square root of 2 and the square root of 3, constants essential for stable construction. The pyramid shape itself is the ultimate symbol of this syntax. Its square base represents the solid, material world, while its four converging triangles point to a single, unifying apex, the spiritual source. It is a diagram of descent and ascent, of how diffuse energy becomes concentrated into a powerful, focused point. This is why understanding the symbol is key to reading the Lost Manual. It tells you the why. It explains why a temple was oriented on a specific axis, why it had a certain number of chambers, and why particular stones were chosen. The architecture was the hardware, but the symbolism was the user interface, providing the context for its operation. This layer of meaning connects the tangible stone to an intangible worldview, a vision of a living, breathing cosmos where everything is interconnected through geometry and number. To move from this grand cosmic code to the physical act of building, we must ask how these abstract symbols were translated into practical action by the hands of the workers. The foundations of Baalbek hold stones so immense that their placement seems to defy human capability. Moving a 70-ton block of granite is one thing, but fitting it against its neighbors with a precision of mere millimeters is an achievement of an entirely different order. This was not accomplished by chance or by muscle alone. It required a universal language of measurement, a set of standards so exact they could be replicated from one worksite to the next, across continents and centuries. This was the surveyor's protocol, the practical application of the cosmic code. Across Neolithic Europe, researcher Alexander Thom identified a recurring unit of length he called the megalithic yard, approximately 2.72 of our modern feet. This same measurement appears to have been used in the construction of stone circles from Scotland to Brittany, suggesting a shared system of advanced metrology that connected vastly separated cultures. How could such a standard be maintained over thousands of miles? The answer may lie in the stars or in simple, brilliant technology. A pendulum of a specific length, for instance, swings with a consistent rhythm, and by counting its swings over a known distance, a standard unit could be precisely recreated by any surveyor anywhere. Even more profound is the Egyptian royal cubit. The standard cubit rod was not an arbitrary length. It appears to have been derived from the Earth itself, with one cubit representing 1/10,000,000th of the distance from the pole to the equator. This means the builders of the Great Pyramid were using a unit of measure that was literally a fraction of the planet's polar circumference. Their ruler was the world. This points to a staggering conclusion that these ancient scientists had not only calculated the size of the Earth with remarkable accuracy, but had then encoded that knowledge into the most fundamental tool of their trade. This standardized protocol allowed for the seamless execution of designs of mind-boggling complexity. A master architect in Giza could draw up plans using the royal cubit, and a team at a quarry hundreds of miles away could cut stones to the exact same specification, confident they would fit perfectly upon arrival. It was a globalized construction code long before globalization. The existence of such precise and universally applied measurements forces us to see these projects not as isolated temples, but as nodes in an integrated network, all speaking the same mathematical language. If the cubit and the megalithic yard were the universal rulers, then the master blueprint itself must have been something far more dynamic than a simple parchment scroll. The Antikythera Mechanism was a clockwork universe held in the palm of your hand, pulled from a 2,000-year-old shipwreck near the Greek island of Antikythera. This corroded bronze artifact spent decades in a museum drawer before anyone grasped its significance. It was not a statue or a simple tool, but a complex machine, an analog computer of breathtaking ingenuity. Its purpose was to predict the future, not of human affairs, but of the heavens themselves. By turning a hand crank, an operator could calculate the precise positions of the sun, moon, and known planets, predict lunar and solar eclipses, and even track the timing of the ancient Olympic Games. It was a miniature observatory, a mechanical model of the cosmos powered by human touch. How did it work? The secret lay inside. X-ray and CT scans have revealed a labyrinth of at least 30 interlocking bronze gears, some with teeth so fine and precise they could only have been cut with tools we would consider advanced for any pre-industrial society. This was not a simple calendar. It was a physical simulation of complex astronomical cycles, including the moon's subtle wobble in its orbit, a motion known as lunar anomaly. Researchers like Dr. Tony Freeth and his team have shown that the mechanism used a complex differential gear, a device previously believed to have been invented in the 16th century, to account for this irregularity. It is a device of such sophistication that nothing matching its complexity would appear again until the mechanical clocks of medieval Europe over 1,000 years later. This single artifact shatters our timeline of technological progress. It is a surviving fragment of a much larger body of knowledge, a piece of firmware from the ancient operating system. It proves that the builder's understanding of celestial mechanics was not just theoretical or symbolic. They could translate that knowledge into intricate physical machinery, into brass and bronze, with gears that turned in perfect mathematical harmony. The Antikythera Mechanism forces a profound question. If this one device survived by sheer chance, how many other computational marvels were melted down for scrap, lost to decay, or still lie hidden in undiscovered shipwrecks? This was not a fluke. It was a product of a technological tradition capable of modeling the universe itself. What other chapters of the lost manual covering logic and engineering have we yet to find? The lifeblood of the ancient world flowed through stone, At the lost city of Mohenjo-daro in the Indus Valley, a complex network of terracotta pipes ran beneath the streets, channeling fresh water into homes and bathing areas, while a separate system carried waste away. This was not primitive plumbing. It was a masterpiece of hydraulic engineering, a sophisticated subroutine within their larger operating system dedicated to the sacred flow of water. These builders understood hydrology with an instinct that feels almost magical. High in the Andes, the Inca engineered aqueducts that used nothing but gravity to transport water for dozens of miles across impossible mountain terrain. Their canals and fountains were precision tools designed to control the speed, volume, and direction of a river's force. This mastery transformed landscapes. At Tiwanaku in Bolivia, an intricate web of raised fields and irrigation channels turned a harsh, arid altiplano into a fertile breadbasket, supporting a vast population. Water was never just a utility. It was a divine element, a physical manifestation of life itself, and to command its flow was to demonstrate a profound harmony with nature's laws. The Minoans on Crete built elaborate palace complexes with running hot and cold water, their advanced drainage systems capable of handling sudden, torrential storms. But the purpose of this waterworks subroutine may have gone far beyond agriculture and sanitation. Some researchers, like engineer Christopher Dunn, point to the curious acoustic properties of certain ancient water channels. They propose that the precise flow of water through specially designed stone conduits could have been used to generate specific, resonant sound frequencies, turning an entire temple into a kind of hydraulic instrument. The movement of water itself, creating constant pressure and vibration against piezoelectric stones like quartz-rich granite, might have generated subtle electrical charges, adding an energetic dimension to the practical function. This was environmental engineering on a systemic scale. The builders did not see a separation between the stone of the temple, the water flowing through it, and the air vibrating above it. They engineered these elements to work in concert as an integrated, functional whole. The management of water reveals a core principle of their entire philosophy. They sought not to conquer nature, but to become a seamless part of its processes, to plug their creations directly into the planet's own circulatory system. If they could program water to sing and stones to generate power, then their ultimate achievement may have been to connect all these subsystems into a single, planet-wide network of energy and information. A Shinto shrine does not dominate the ancient tree at its heart. Instead, the wooden structure embraces it, framing the living giant as the true center of reverence. High in the Andes, the stone terraces of Machu Picchu do not conquer the mountain. They flow over its ridges like a second skin, a man-made geology that honors the contours of the land. This reveals the deepest layer of the builder's code, a philosophical framework where harmony, balance, and integration were not aesthetic choices but fundamental engineering principles. The modern world often builds by flattening a hill or diverting a river. The ancients built by listening. They understood that a structure could not be stable if it fought its environment. It had to become a partner with the forces of wind, water, and earth. This philosophy was codified into precise systems across the globe. In China, Feng Shui provided the rules for placing a home or a tomb in alignment with the breath of the land, the dragon lines known as ley lines in the West. It dictated the flow of Kai, the vital energy that moves through all things, ensuring that a building would attract positive energy and promote well-being. In India, the Vastu Shastra was even more explicit. It was a sacred architectural science that dictated everything from the orientation of a building to the placement of its doors and the materials used, all to align the microcosm of the home with the macrocosm of the universe. And across the Pacific, Polynesian navigators and builders understood mana, a spiritual force that permeated the world. A temple, or mari, was constructed to concentrate and channel this mana, its power intrinsically linked to its harmony with the surrounding sea, sky, and volcanic rock. As physicist and philosopher Fritjof Capra has noted, this ancient worldview bears a striking resemblance to modern systems ecology. It recognizes that nothing exists in isolation. A building is a node within a vast, interconnected web of life, geology, and energy. To disrupt one thread is to risk unraveling the entire tapestry. This was not superstition. It was a sophisticated, empirical understanding that a structure built in defiance of natural currents would be prone to decay, discomfort, and even collapse. A house placed against the flow of groundwater might develop dampness and sickness. A temple misaligned with the sun would fail to mark the sacred moments of the year. Their philosophy was their ultimate quality control. This insistence on integration is why their ruins feel so profoundly peaceful today. They are not scars on the landscape, but weathered extensions of it. The principles of Feng Shui and Vastu created structures that were naturally cool in summer and warm in winter, that channeled fresh air and maximized natural light, achieving a form of passive sustainability we now strive to replicate with complex technology. They built for resilience by becoming one with the system, not by trying to overpower it. This philosophical core answers the ultimate question of their endeavor. The technical how of perfect alignments and impossible stonework was always in service of a greater why. They were not just building shelters or monuments. They were engaged in a sacred act of co-creation with a living planet, programming their structures to hum in quiet resonance with the world's own deep, enduring song. A civilization does not simply forget how to build a pyramid. The disappearance of the builder's knowledge feels less like a gradual forgetting and more like a system-wide security wipe. Why would such profound understanding be allowed to fade into myth and legend? The answer lies in a combination of catastrophic events, deliberate suppression, and a protective secrecy that treated this wisdom as a sacred and potentially dangerous trust. The burning of the Library of Alexandria stands as a towering symbol of this loss. When its scrolls were consumed by flames, entire libraries of technical manuals on engineering, astronomy, and sacred geometry may have turned to ash, erasing centuries of compiled data in a single, tragic fire. But the destruction of physical records is only part of the story. Parallel to this, entire schools of thought were systematically suppressed. The Gnostic and Hermetic traditions, which taught that divine knowledge could be accessed directly through geometry and nature, were declared heresy by rising orthodoxies. Their practitioners were silenced, their texts destroyed, and their teachings driven underground. This was not merely a theological dispute. It was a battle over who controlled the operating manual for reality itself. The knowledge was considered too potent for the masses, a power that required moral and spiritual maturity to wield responsibly. This is why the master mason guilds became so secretive. They were not just protecting trade secrets, they were the last guardians of a fragmented code, passing down fragments through initiation rites and symbolic handshakes, ensuring that only those proven worthy could access the next level of understanding. Their lodge meetings were the final, flickering servers of a dying network. Yet some theories point to an even more dramatic collapse. Proponents of the Younger Dryas impact hypothesis suggest that a cataclysmic event around 12,800 years ago, possibly a comet impact, plunged the world into a miniature ice age and wiped out advanced prehistoric civilizations. This global trauma would have shattered societies, scattered survivors, and severed the direct line of oral transmission from master to apprentice in a single generation. The knowledge didn't vanish, it was fragmented, its survivors left to rebuild with only shards of the original system, which slowly devolved into myth and superstition. Even the transition from an oral to a written culture played its part. The living, experiential knowledge of a master builder, passed on through chant and hands-on demonstration, could never be fully captured on a papyrus scroll. The subtle feel for stone, the intuitive understanding of resonant frequencies, the rhythm of a celestial chant, these were nuances that were lost in translation to a written symbol. The manual was not merely lost, it was intentionally encrypted, hidden behind layers of symbolism and protected by the ultimate security protocol, time itself. This forces a haunting and hopeful possibility. What if this knowledge was not destroyed, but deliberately safeguarded, waiting for a future age when humanity had developed the scientific literacy, and perhaps the wisdom to finally decode its message without misusing its power? This very mystery is what fuels our modern quest to recover the lost code. A laser scans the surface of a Mayan monument, mapping every microscopic groove and weathering pattern with a precision the human hand could never achieve. This is the new frontier of archaeology, where digital tools are becoming our universal translators for the builder's lost language. In the dense jungles of Central America, LIDAR technology, which stands for light detection and ranging, is firing millions of laser pulses from aircraft to peel back the leafy canopy. What was once an impenetrable green wall is now revealing the ghostly footprints of entire cities, with sprawling networks of roads, farms, and temples we never knew existed. These are not just new dots on a map, they are missing lines of code in the continental operating system, showing how these sites were connected in a vast, intelligent grid. Back in the lab, another kind of translation is underway. Powerful computers are crunching astronomical data, comparing the alignments of thousands of ancient monuments against the historical positions of stars and planets. They are finding correlations no single researcher could ever spot, suggesting that a temple in Turkey and a pyramid in Egypt might have been tracking the same specific star cluster. This digital planetarium is revealing a celestial commonality that stretches across the globe. Meanwhile, material scientists are performing a kind of digital alchemy. They are using spectrometry to analyze the atomic composition of ancient concrete from Roman harbors and the unique metal alloys used in pre-Columbian artifacts. They have discovered that Roman seawater concrete, for 2,000 years submerged and battered by waves, has actually grown stronger over time, forming rare mineral crystals that seal cracks. This is a self-healing technology we are only just beginning to understand. At the Giza Plateau, ground-penetrating radar and drone-based photogrammetry are acting like a global X-ray, searching for voids and hidden passages within the Great Pyramid itself. These projects are not about treasure hunting, they are about diagnostics, about running a system scan on the most sophisticated hardware the ancient world ever produced. All this data forms a colossal new library, but it is a library written in a cipher we have not yet fully broken. We can measure the angle of a corridor to 1,000th of a degree, but we cannot yet hear the chant the builders sang as they laid the foundation stone. We can identify the mineral content of a geopolymer, but we do not know the ritual that activated its pour. The technology gives us the raw output, the ones and zeros of the ancient OS, but the meaning, the living context, remains just out of reach. This digital decoding is bringing us to the brink of a monumental discovery. We are assembling the pieces of the manual, page by scattered page, yet the final step requires something more than processing power. It demands a shift in perception, a willingness to read the data not just as engineering, but as a dialogue with a living planet. What profound responsibility comes with finally accessing that root-level command prompt? The very words we use to translate their world may be blinding us to its true nature. Take the Egyptian term Akit. In our textbooks, it is neatly defined as horizon, a simple line where the earth meets the sky. But to the builders of the pyramids, it was so much more. It was a dynamic interface, a liminal zone where the sun was reborn each morning and the soul of the pharaoh ascended to the stars. It was a place of transformation, a technical term for a spiritual and energetic process. When we read temple inscriptions that say a pyramid is the Akit of a king, we are not just reading about a location. We are reading about its function as a machine for cosmic transition. This is the profound linguistic challenge at the heart of decoding the lost manual. Our modern language is built on a foundation of materialism and reductionism, designed to break things down into discrete, measurable parts. Their language was symbolic, holistic, and multi-layered, where a single word could simultaneously describe a physical object, a celestial event, and a state of consciousness. Consider the Sanskrit concept of prana. We often translate it as life force or breath, but this is a pale shadow of its original meaning. Prana was the fundamental energy that animates the entire cosmos, the vibratory essence that flows through living beings, the wind, and the circuits of the stars. It was the electricity of the universe, and their architecture was designed to channel it. Similarly, the Egyptian Ka was not merely a spiritual double. It was the vital spark, the individual's connection to the universal source of power, a kind of metaphysical battery that required constant replenishment through ritual and sacred alignment. This is why a temple was not just a building, it was a charging station for the Ka. When we flatten these terms into single, simple definitions, we strip the operating system of its essential code. Philosophers and scholars like Dr. Jeremy Nadler argue that we are perpetually imposing our mechanistic worldview onto a reality the ancients experienced as fully alive and conscious. We search their texts for linear instructions, for a step-by-step guide to assembling a pyramid, when what they left us is a book of poetry, a treatise on philosophy, and a manual of practical science, all woven into a single, inseparable tapestry. They did not separate the spiritual from the physical, the artistic from the engineering. The chant that aligned the stones was as vital as the geometry that set their angles. This forces a necessary humility upon our entire decoding project. We are trying to run their sophisticated, spiritually integrated software on the incompatible hardware of our modern, analytical mind. We have the processing power to map and measure everything, but we lack the original user interface, the intuitive understanding that saw number and nature as one. Are we translating their words, or are we just building a cage of our own concepts around them? The true breakthrough may not come from a more powerful computer, but from a fundamental shift in how we think about thought itself. A blueprint can be felt as deeply as it is drawn. Deep in the Amazon rainforest, a shaman drinks a bitter brew and enters a world where the forest itself speaks, revealing the healing spirit of a vine or the geometric pattern of life force flowing through the land. This is not superstition, but a method of perception, a way of accessing information that is invisible to the ordinary senses. What if the ancient builders used a similar tool, not to escape reality, but to perceive its underlying architecture? This controversial idea suggests that altered states of consciousness were a deliberate subroutine within their operating system, a technology for glimpsing the energetic blueprints of their creations. We find echoes of this practice across the ancient world. In Greece, initiates of the Eleusinian mysteries drank a sacred potion, the kykeon, and experienced profound visions that were said to reveal the secrets of life and death. Across the Atlantic, Native American cultures have used peyote in sacred rituals for millennia to gain spiritual insight and healing knowledge. These were not random acts of intoxication, but structured, ritualistic journeys into non-ordinary realms. Researcher Dr. Rick Strassman's work with the powerful psychoactive DMT, a compound naturally produced by the human brain and found in plants like those used in ayahuasca, revealed a startling pattern. Volunteers consistently reported encountering intricate, hyper-geometric landscapes and architectural forms, as if they were downloading schematics from a universal source. This points to a radical possibility. The master builders may not have merely calculated the golden ratio, they might have journeyed into a state of consciousness where they could see it, feel it, and trace its perfect lines in the fabric of reality itself. They were accessing what the philosopher Plato called the realm of ideal forms, a dimension of pure, perfect shapes that our imperfect world only approximates. This perspective does not negate their staggering engineering skill. Instead, it suggests that their logic was coupled with a direct, intuitive perception. The precise angle of a pyramid corridor was not just a number on a surveyor's rod. It was a resonance they could sense, a harmonic they could hear in an expanded state of awareness. It frames consciousness itself as the ultimate interface, the living software that could run the most complex programs of their sacred geometry. While this remains a highly speculative frontier, it fundamentally challenges our narrow, materialistic definition of technology. If they could use their own minds as precision instruments to tap into a field of archetypal information, then the greatest tool in the lost manual was not a chisel or a lever, but the awakened human spirit itself. A square and compass rests upon an open volume of sacred lore, its geometry a silent sermon. Step into a Masonic lodge, and you are surrounded by the iconography of the ancient builders, the pillar and the arch, the checkered floor representing the dualities of existence, the all-seeing eye within a triangle. These are not random decorations. They are the inherited lexicon of the lost operating system, preserved not on stone but in ritual and allegory. Western esoteric traditions like Freemasonry, Rosicrucianism, and the Hermetic arts have long claimed to be the custodians of a perennial philosophy, a shattered mirror reflecting the wisdom of Thoth and Pythagoras. Their central tenet is that this profound knowledge was never truly lost, but was deliberately encoded in symbols to protect it from profanation and the ravages of time. The lodge itself becomes a symbolic temple, and the initiate's journey of self-improvement is a process of learning to read this architectural code, first within the self and then within the universe. The focus is on the transformation of the rough ashlar, the unrefined individual, into the perfect cubic stone, ready to take its place in a spiritual edifice. This is the ancient builder's purpose reimagined for the inner world. The philosophical parallels are undeniable. Just as the master builders of antiquity used sacred geometry to raise structures in harmony with the cosmos, these traditions use the same principles, the golden ratio, the 5 Platonic solids, as maps for consciousness itself. The Rosicrucian manifestos spoke of an invisible college of adepts who possessed the secrets of nature, a direct echo of the master-apprentice guilds of old. The Hermetic maxim, as above so below, is a foundational principle of the ancient operating system, declaring the unity between the macrocosm of the stars and the microcosm of the human being and their creations. Of course, the historical links are murky and fiercely debated. There is no unbroken parchment trail leading from the architects of the Great Pyramid to the Grand Masters of 18th century London. The connection is not one of direct lineage, but of symbolic resonance and philosophical reclamation. During the Enlightenment, when reason began to challenge dogma, these societies became repositories for ideas that were elsewhere suppressed. They kept the flame of a particular kind of inquiry alive, one that saw no contradiction between geometry and God, between building a better society and understanding the architecture of the soul. They were not historians preserving a dead document, but active participants in reinventing the manual for their own age. Their continued existence, with their rituals and degrees, is a testament to the enduring human drive to find the master pattern. It shows that the quest for the lost code is not merely an archaeological puzzle, but a deeply personal and transformative one. The legacy they carry may be fragmented and reinterpreted, but it proves that the echo of the builder's song never truly faded. It simply found new chambers in which to resonate. Our modern skyscrapers are sealed behind glass, fighting a constant, expensive war against the sun with roaring air conditioners. The ancient builders chose a different path, one of elegant collaboration with natural forces. They achieved climate control and structural longevity, not by overpowering their environment, but by mastering its rhythms, creating a sustainability paradigm we are only now relearning. In the scorching deserts of Persia, architects designed wind catchers or badgers, tall, chimney-like towers that captured the slightest breeze from high above the ground. These towers funneled cool air down into the heart of buildings, while simultaneously drawing warm air up and out, creating a continuous, passive ventilation system that required no electricity, only a profound understanding of thermodynamics. Across the world, the Anasazi people built their cliff dwellings in the American Southwest with a brilliant awareness of solar geometry. They positioned their homes deep within south-facing canyon alcoves, which acted like a giant sundial. In the winter, the low-hanging sun would penetrate the recesses, warming the stone walls. During the blistering summer, the high arc of the sun would leave the dwellings in cool, protective shadow. This was not guesswork, it was a precise, applied science of solar orientation. Then there is the breathtaking water management of the Nabateans at Petra. In a region that receives only a few inches of rain each year, they carved a sprawling city from rose-red cliffs. Their secret was an intricate network of channels, dams, and cisterns that captured every drop of seasonal floodwater, storing it for the long, dry months. They turned a desert into a habitable oasis by listening to the language of water and sculpting the landscape to work with its flow, not against it. These were not isolated, clever tricks. They were unified applications of a systemic understanding of hydrology and ecology, core subroutines in the ancient operating system. Today, a new generation of architects and engineers is looking back to these techniques for inspiration. They are designing modern buildings that incorporate thermal chimneys for natural ventilation, that use strategic shading and thermal mass to regulate temperature, and that manage stormwater through green roofs and permeable surfaces. This convergence is profound. It suggests that decoding the lost manual is not merely an academic hobby. It is becoming a vital key to solving our most pressing modern problems. The ancients built civilizations that lasted for millennia without consuming a single ounce of coal or a watt of grid power. Their structures were resilient, efficient, and seamlessly integrated. They offer us a blueprint for a sustainable future, a set of time-tested instructions written not on paper, but in stone and wind and water, waiting for us to finally read them correctly. A scholarly conference hall can feel like a fortress of established ideas. Propose a theory of ancient advanced technology there, and you will often face a wall of polite but firm skepticism. This is the front line of a quiet intellectual war, a deep divide between mainstream archaeology and what it labels fringe history. On one side, university-trained academics uphold a methodology built on peer review, verifiable evidence, and incremental progress. Their concerns are far from trivial. They rightly point to the profound lack of direct evidence. Where are the advanced tools, the schematics, the written manuals explicitly describing geopolymer concrete or piezoelectric generators? To them, attributing these wonders to a lost super-civilization can be a form of intellectual theft, robbing our ancestors of their own genuine and immense ingenuity. It commits the sin of anachronism, projecting our modern technological mindset onto cultures that operated within a completely different, often spiritual framework. A mainstream scholar might argue that the real mystery is not how they did it with advanced tech, but how they achieved such perfection with simple tools and profound observation, a feat that is in its own way even more impressive. Yet from the other side of the divide comes a powerful counter-argument. Alternative researchers contend that the academic establishment is a closed system, too invested in protecting its own paradigm. They point to compelling anomalies that are routinely dismissed rather than investigated. The vitrified stone at ancient sites, which appears melted by extreme heat, or the precise machining marks on granite boxes in Egypt that seem to require diamond-tipped tools, are often explained away with unsatisfying theories about primitive methods. This camp argues that dogma has replaced curiosity, that the fear of being associated with pseudoscience has created a culture where any challenge to the timeline is automatically rejected. This intellectual conflict is not a distraction from the mystery. It is an essential part of the decoding process itself. This friction tests every new idea, burning away the weakest speculation and forcing stronger hypotheses to be refined. It is the necessary pressure that turns a wild guess into a credible theory. The middle ground, then, is not a place of compromise but of synthesis. It is a space where open-minded inquiry welcomes radical questions, but where rigorous skepticism demands solid evidence. It is where a materials scientist can analyze ancient concrete without first assuming it was poured, and where an archaeologist can study celestial alignments without dismissing them as mere superstition. The sheer intensity of this resistance reveals something crucial. It shows just how revolutionary a successful decoding of the builder's manual would be. It would not simply add a footnote to history. It would require rewriting entire chapters, overturning the very story we tell ourselves about human progress. This ongoing debate is the crucible in which our modern understanding of antiquity is being painfully, slowly, and necessarily forged. We are not just solving a historical puzzle, we are answering a deep psychological call. The idea of a lost manual for the ancient world resonates because it touches something fundamental in the human spirit, a longing for a time when humanity lived in greater harmony with the cosmos. This is not merely a curiosity, it is a form of homesickness for a golden age we feel in our bones but cannot prove with our records. In a modern world that often feels chaotic, fragmented, and disconnected, the notion of a unified, purposeful past offers a powerful antidote to our anxiety. It suggests that our ancestors possessed a coherence we have lost, a master key to existence that we are now desperately trying to rediscover. This search for lost origins is a powerful psychological drive, a quest to find our place in a story grander than the one we are currently living. Our brains are also hardwired for this specific kind of mystery. Human cognition is a pattern recognition engine, constantly scanning the noise of the world for meaningful signals. When we see the same mathematical constants in a pyramid and a temple on the other side of the world, our minds light up with the thrill of a connection. This is the same instinct that lets us see shapes in clouds or faces in the moon. The ancient world, with its scattered ruins and cryptic symbols, presents the ultimate pattern-seeking challenge, a global Rorschach test that invites us to project our deepest hopes and our most rigorous intellect onto the silent stone. It is the ultimate intellectual puzzle, a lock that has remained closed for millennia. The desire to be the one to finally turn the key, to crack a code that has baffled countless generations, is an irresistible lure for the human mind. It is a test of our own ingenuity, a chance to prove that our modern intelligence can finally comprehend the genius of the deep past. Solving it would provide more than just historical facts. It would offer a profound psychological reassurance. It would mean that knowledge, no matter how lost or suppressed, is never truly gone forever. It can be recovered, remembered, and redeemed. This deep-seated drive is the invisible fuel that powers both the meticulous work of the academic in the lab and the passionate speculation of the enthusiast at home. It ensures that the quest to decode the ancient operating system is more than an archaeological dig. It is a journey into the very heart of our own yearning for meaning, connection, and a sense of wonder that the modern world has not been able to extinguish. Its smooth, casing stones once reflected the sun with a brilliant scene from the mountains, a perfect square of light signaling its presence across the desert. The Great Pyramid of Giza is not merely an old pile of rocks. It is the ultimate expression of the ancient operating system, a single structure where every thread of the lost manual converges into a unified, functioning whole. Its four sides are aligned to the four cardinal directions with an accuracy that still baffles modern surveyors, a feat of celestial programming that required watching the slow dance of the stars for generations. But this perfect orientation is just the first layer of its code. Look deeper into its internal geometry, and you find a mathematical manifesto. The ratio of its perimeter to its original height is a precise expression of pi. The proportions of its inner chambers and outer form repeatedly echo the golden ratio, phi, embedding the constants of life itself into millions of tons of limestone and granite. This was not a random occurrence. It was a deliberate act of encoding universal truths into a permanent, physical form. Walk through its narrow ascending passage and emerge into the soaring space of the Grand Gallery. Its corbelled walls rise high above you, creating a narrow, resonant chamber. Some researchers propose this was not just a corridor, but a giant sonic instrument. The precise angles and dimensions of the gallery may have been designed to amplify and focus specific sound frequencies, turning ritual chants or even the simple fall of water into a pervasive, low-frequency hum that vibrated through the entire structure. This connects directly to the mystery of its missing apex, the capstone that was never found. Was it a solid piece of electrum, a gold and silver alloy, designed to act as a powerful conductor for atmospheric electricity? Its absence is a silent question mark at the summit of the pyramid, leaving us to wonder if the entire edifice was meant to be crowned with a material that interacted with the energy of the sky. So what was its ultimate function? The traditional view labels it a tomb, yet not a single royal mummy or grave good has ever been discovered within its precisely cut chambers. This glaring emptiness has fueled alternative theories for centuries. Could it have been a power generator using the piezoelectric properties of its granite interior and the flowing water in shafts beneath it to create a subtle, harvestable energy field? Or was it an initiation chamber where a candidate would undergo a transformative journey through its dark, narrow passages, emerging into the king's chamber for a final, consciousness-altering ritual aided by the room's unique acoustic and energetic properties? The evidence is so multifaceted that the most compelling answer may be the most challenging. It could have been all these things at once, a tomb for the soul's journey, not the body. A generator of spiritual and perhaps physical energy, a library of stone preserving the measures of the earth and the heavens. This idea is pushed even further by a stunning geographical claim. If you calculate the planet's landmasses, the Great Pyramid sits at the exact center of the Earth's continental mass. It is the bullseye on the world's target. Whether this is a miraculous coincidence or a demonstration of a lost geographical science, it reinforces the pyramid's role as a global central processing unit. It synthesizes astronomy into its alignments, material science into its stonework, mathematics into its proportions, and geography into its location. Every subroutine of the ancient operating system runs here in perfect harmony. This single structure is our most complete file from the lost manual, a physical Rosetta Stone that holds the key to everything we have explored. Cracking its code would not just explain one building, it would unlock the entire system, revealing a vision of the world where humanity did not just build upon the Earth, but programmed in concert with it. The search for the Builder's Code is spilling out of university labs and into the world. A global network of curious minds, armed with nothing more than an internet connection, is now joining the hunt. This is the new frontier of citizen science, where the collective intelligence of thousands can tackle problems that once baffled isolated experts. Imagine a retired engineer in Tokyo, a software developer in Berlin, and a school teacher in Brazil all working on the same puzzle, their unique perspectives converging online to spot a pattern everyone else missed. This is not a future dream, it is happening right now. Platforms like Global Explorer, created by archaeologist Dr. Sarah Parkak, invite anyone to scan satellite images for signs of looting or undiscovered ruins. Every click by a volunteer helps protect our shared heritage and adds another data point to the map. This open-source approach is breaking down the silos that have long separated disciplines. In online forums, you will find physicists debating the acoustic properties of Mayan chambers with musicians, while programmers write code to simulate the celestial alignments of Stonehenge. The rigid boundaries between history, engineering, and computer science are dissolving, creating a fertile ground for the kind of cross-pollination that leads to real breakthroughs. The next great leap may come from an artificial intelligence trained on this avalanche of new data. An eye does not get tired. It can process millions of satellite photos, cross-reference every known celestial alignment, and analyze the mineral composition of stones from 10,000 sites, all in the time it takes a human researcher to read a single journal article. It could detect a subtle geometric relationship between sites in Peru and Cambodia that no one ever thought to look for, revealing a hidden layer of the global network. This collaborative model fundamentally changes the nature of the quest. The lost manual will not be discovered as a single, intact volume in a hidden chamber. It is being reassembled line by line by a planetary community. Each volunteered observation, each shared analysis, each coded algorithm is like a recovered fragment of a sprawling, ancient text. The final translation will not belong to a single academic, but to all of humanity, a collective achievement that mirrors the very cooperation that must have built these wonders in the first place. Our journey ends where it began, with the silent stones and the questions they provoke. We have moved from the sheer physical wonder of these monuments to the invisible code that may have guided their creation, a lost operating system written not in ones and zeros, but in celestial alignments, sacred geometry, and a deep resonance with the living earth. This exploration reveals a tapestry where precise mathematics, advanced material science, and a spiritual philosophy of harmony were not separate disciplines, but threads in a single, seamless fabric. While the complete manual remains just beyond our grasp, each new fragment, the intricate gears of the Antikythera Mechanism, the ghostly cities revealed by LIDAR, the self-healing Roman concrete, brings another line of this ancient code into focus. The ultimate prize of this quest may not be proving the existence of a single, vanished super-civilization, but in recovering a way of thought that saw no division between the engineer and the priest, the artist and the astronomer. The philosopher George Santayana's warning echoes across the centuries, reminding us that those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat its errors. By striving to decode this ancient operating system, we are not merely uncovering history. We are searching for a blueprint that could guide us toward a different kind of future, one that is both profoundly advanced and inherently sustainable, where technology works with the grain of nature, not against it. The code is waiting, etched into the landscape and whispered in the stones. The challenge to read it is now ours to accept. We would love to hear which part of this enduring mystery captures your imagination the most. Share your thoughts in the comments and subscribe to join us as we continue this great journey of discovery.